Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for this for our monthly webinar. I said on the last one I'd try and end the year with a bang, and hopefully we'll do that with this topic. That for all the right reasons is of interest to people, and that's QS and artificial intelligence in 2026. Is it a threat, an opportunity, or both? It's going to be fairly tricky to cover quite a broad subject, not just quantity surveying, but AI in 30 minutes. So what I've tried to do with this session, given that we've got half an hour, is keep it fairly high level, introduce some concepts, but not go too far into the detail. That might be a topic of a webinar in the future. So just by way of background, I do this on every webinar. I just introduce Quantic, who we are and what we do. So for those who've seen this before, thank you for returning. You'll have to listen again. And for those who are joining us, hopefully this gives you a bit of information about Quantic as a company. So we're a quantity surveying business, primarily contractor background, but we do work with various different clients on quantity surveying related activities. We're an RSCS regulated firm, and our services centre around quantity surveying. So we pride ourselves on being able to do bills of quantities, which is a bit of a lost art sometimes, and I'll come on to that. We do project quantity surveying, so day-to-day, project running or part of a project team. Probably where we are most specialist and I'll tend to operate really well is construction claims. So extensive experience of helping clients with some big complicated stuff. That then leads into commercial advisory. So we're often retained to provide advice and support to businesses and teams. And then moving through to the very specialist, we do expert witness work, quantum expert witness work. And we also support insolvency practitioners with restructuring and insolvency related QS services. We're headquartered in Leeds, but we provide services across the UK. In fact, we probably do next to no work in Leeds, and we're actually doing work in London, Birmingham, Ireland, all over the place, probably everywhere but Leeds. So our geographical reach is quite wide. And then just quickly to introduce me for those that don't know me, my name's Tom Haley. I'm managing director and founder of Quantic. My experience is contractor quantity surveying related issues. So I've definitely seen the good and the not so good in the industry. Worked on some big disputes and some big projects. Coupled with professional qualifications. So my construction engineering masters at Cambridge was very much a thought leadership program, on top of more around quantity surveying. Qualifications and expert witness certificates. I've been managing director of Quantic for 5 years now. And prior to that, I worked across the world with Lang O'Rourke. And I set Quantic up a big part of our focus is how do you take traditional methods, combine them with innovative practices to, I guess, take the quantity surveying profession to another level. So today's topic is very much part of that. So getting into the meat of the session, what we'll do is we'll cover very quickly some GPT basics. I'll talk briefly about where GPT can be powerful and where it can be destructive. So the good and the bad, training your dragon. Moving on from that, where you must lead. So on the back of those limitations and the benefits, where does that place you? Then I'll talk through some examples of the way that we've use GPT to improve either the accuracy or the speed of our services. And then I'll come on to some key takeaways. So very, very basic. What does GPT stand for? So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's generative in that it creates text. It's pre-trained in that it's trained on huge amounts of data, and the transformer aspect is the model architecture that it uses. On the data, it's important to know that the GPT will train not only based on the data that you give it, but it will train itself on the data. It will test itself on the data. In layman's terms, in the background. So even when you might think it's just training itself based on the questions that you're asking, but that's not the case. It's always self learning, which means its rate of improvement and ability to create text and process huge amounts of data. I guess there's a compound improvement in its performance, and that speaks to the development of GPT models of the last 3 to 4 years. So again, very simply, what does it do? It will take text and/or figures as text. It converts that text into tokens, and the tokens are converted into chunks, and those are converted into numbers. So the GPT doesn't strictly read the text. It reads and understands numbers, and it processes numbers, even to the extent that a word can be broken down into letters, and a number might be assigned to a letter. So it doesn't read text. It processes it and converts it into a format that it understands. And then very simply, you ask a question, and GPT predicts what the answer is based on the text and the training it's done, and then GPT outputs an answer. So it's not, I think maybe as some people see, it's not necessarily a knowledge bank. It is a predictor, and it predicts based on the data that is available to it. So it's limited by the data that it has and the training that it's got. It's also biased by the data that it has and not biased by the data that it has. So the text that it has, the way it processes it, ultimately leads to the predictions that it makes and the answers that it gives, which I'll come to when I talk about some of the destructive elements of GPT. But that's important when you're using to understand that it's predicting the answer. And then again, a few more basics. So the primary model creator that most people will know and use is OpenAI. OpenAI have built or delivered into the market GPTs like GPT-4, GPT-4o, and then the most recent GPT-5, which is a world away from GPT-4, quite incredibly. And then now there is 5.1 as well on ChatGPT. Then you've got the models that run off the GPTs that OpenAI have created. So again, you will typically interface with something like Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, or Llama. So it's important to understand those distinctions as well. So there are a few basics. Training your dragon is a concept I've used in a couple of case studies I've done and articles I've written. And that's because, for me anyway, GPT, like a dragon, can be unbelievably powerful and helpful for your cause. But at the same time, it could just turn around, breathe fire on your house and burn it down in seconds. So it could be incredibly destructive. And it's important as a user or someone who's adopting these tools that you understand and harness its power, but also that you're aware of the potentially destructive risks, and that you have plans in place to manage those for the benefit of you So I was delivering the session this afternoon with PowerPoint on my front screen. Wasn't aware that there were that technical issues creeped in about halfway through, and just went on to deliver the session, and then came off and saw quite a few messages from people saying they're having some difficulties. So really sorry about that. One of those things. What I have done is I've looked at where looked at the recording, looked at where those issues started, and then we're re-recording the last half, pretty much, of the session to deliver that to people. So apologies for that. Just one of those things, unfortunately. So where we were, as I understand it, is we were. I think I was talking through the power of AI, the speed of it, the way it can recognize patterns and do those things in a way that a human either can't do or could do, but by taking a considerable amount of time. It can synthesize documents, multiple documents quickly and create summaries, and it can help you get going or check your work, and you know, and it just doesn't stop. It's always available, and you can just repeat the same question and it keeps answering. It's pretty formidable in that sense. On the other side of it, the disruption, it will make assumptions and convince you an answer is right, even though it's wrong. It might not tell you what those assumptions are unless you ask. Sometimes it might not know that it's made the assumption until you ask. It doesn't have inherent judgment. And all of that leads to the risk that a human either stops thinking, stops checking, or becomes complacent. So that's definitely a risk. And then the biggest risk is people feeding data into a publicly available model that might be confidential or sensitive. So that's definitely a blind spot for some people, and something that you should absolutely avoid. But understanding the power and the destruction, the opportunity and the risk, to put it back into commercial language, there are huge opportunities, but where you must lead as a professional in your role and in your organization, firstly is standards. So you are, the GPT's purview and database might be extensive, but your brain, the purview of your brain is relative to your experience and what you've seen, what good looks like. You've been trained to follow certain methods. You've been trained to explain logic, and those things can't be replaced. So retaining those and using those to your advantage are very powerful. Assurance. So as a human, you check data sources. The GPT might not distinguish between two data sources, where you might look at something and say, well, I know that one's more reliable than the other one, so I'm going to prefer it. The GPT might take the opposite view for reasons that you don't know. And then understanding assumptions from a QS perspective, we're always making assumptions, whether it's valuation work, variations. There's always assumptions in what we do because we're not building repetitive things. We're generally building bespoke buildings, and inevitably they're not fully designed. They haven't been fully programmed and built. So we're always making assumptions in everything we do. And responsible use. So as the user, where you must lead is using AI where appropriate. Where it isn't appropriate, don't use it. And most importantly, protecting client data. And then accountability. So regardless of how things play out, you have to own your outputs. You will always be responsible for your outputs. I don't think there's a situation where OpenAI will underwrite your PI insurance and take that liability, the negligence liability from you. You're always going to have to own those on behalf of yourself and the organization that you represent. So checking, understanding, having explainable logic, all of these things are crucial and won't be lost, even with the introduction of GPTs. And central to that, really, and what all that comes back to is human judgment. So as humans, the way that you see and perceive the world based on your experiences is still valuable. Um, Probably what we are going to see, and it's certainly something to think about in 2026, is as GPT start to take a lot of the administrative burden away from people, what's really going to set people apart is how they deal with others, how they deal with clients. It's going to be those softer skills, those personal skills that are going to be a big differentiator in the workplace. Making commitments, delivering on commitments, reliability, integrity are always important, but I think will become even more important in the future workplace. So supercharging QS work, just a couple of examples of a few examples of things that we've done just to bring some of this to life. Look at some of the strengths and the weaknesses of GPTs. We took an unfamiliar contract form from a client recently, and there aren't many contracts that we're unfamiliar with, but this one was an international one in a country that we've worked in previously, but not extensively. Whilst we are familiar with the provisions, we can find them. What you often find with a standard form contract with amendments is they can be quite tricky to find unless you've used the contract before, and they can take time. So being able to work with a GPT and prompting the GPT to find the things that we needed, find any interrelationships between clauses, and tell us where those clauses are so that we can go and check them and validate them. Um, Significantly increase the accuracy of the work that we're doing, but most importantly, significantly reduce the time in which it took us to do the work. So the client wasn't paying for that time required to get familiar. They were paying for the output, which is the bit that was valuable to them. Expert work. So recently, I gave evidence that formed part of a response in an adjudication. For those that have been involved in adjudications, you will know that timescales are tight. The deadlines come around pretty quickly, and especially in response, you get served a huge volume of documents. And as a quantum expert, you haven't been involved in this case before, you know nothing about it. You are from a standing start having to get to grips with things pretty quickly. Things that the referring party have had months to work out, and things that often others involved in the process are familiar with because they've been involved for some time. So for me, to be able to take those response documents and prompt the GPT to help me understand where certain facts are. So I know what I'm looking for, I know what I want, but in this huge body with pages and pages of reports and oodles of appendices and appendices within appendices, getting what I need can sometimes take time. So using a GPT to navigate that, pull things out, tell me where it found certain things so that I can go and check. Hugely advantageous, both to getting me going, but secondly to the quality and accuracy of what I was able to do in the time period, and the overall fee level that we delivered to, because we don't have, we're not spending a lot of time having to navigate the documents. We're pulling out what we need and we're getting on with the product as quickly as possible. Bills of quantities. So again, similar challenge, different circumstances. Client's got a tight time tender period, but you have to be accurate. If you miss something and it's not priced, then that's a loss to your client. So accuracy is crucial, and the turnaround so that they can go out and get prices. Means there's a lot of pressure. So we've used our GPT to locate items in the specification. So again, instead of rummaging around, multiple documents, we can use GPT to help us get familiar with the design information and where certain things are. And then at the back end, we can use it to check BQ descriptions against the relevant standard. So here's what we've produced. Here is the standard. Can you tell me if there are any? Can you spot any issues? And if it does pick anything up, it's given us that quality check. Low cost, but high value at the back end. And then probably for me personally, where I've really leveraged its capabilities building applications. So I'm not somebody who has a great deal of coding knowledge. In fact, I have next to none. But I've been able to work with GPTs to build bespoke apps that remove a substantial amount of data handling. Um, remove Excel, Excel as the sort of the engine. We use a database approach. We use smart user interfaces for data collection. We structure the database so that the data collected is useful, and then we use Power BI to analyze the data. Much more efficient. And what we are doing as an organization is I guess we're designing that into our infrastructure. We're not starting from a position of trying to add admin tasks in as we grow. And we're designing all of that out from the start by building smart apps or applications, which I would not have been able to have done were it not for GPT work. And if you think about multiplying that, or converting that into other areas, possibilities are endless. And then the sweet spot tasks are the high volume, the tasks where there is a high volume of documents, the requirement for accuracy is non-negotiable, and there are tight deadlines. The ability to get up to speed quickly, find what you need and deliver the output. GPTs are absolutely invaluable for that. So short break in between the two halves, the half that went well, and then this second half that's had to be rerun. But we've really skimmed across the surface in that half an hour period, going from the sort of very macro picture to which is the how does it work, to the micro picture for the QS and what might be useful for you to think about. Things to remember though. GPTs predict answers based on existing data sets. So they don't give you the answer. They are predicting what they think the answer is based on the data available to them, based on the training that it's done. QS professionals, you're always going to have unique value because you see the world in a certain way. You can view technical, financial, and contractual information a certain way, and you can make judgments around those that are very difficult to replicate without the experience of dealing with them. Probably the biggest area for 2026 and the critical differentiators are going to be professional standards, transparency, and human oversight, and the ability to command the machine to work in the way that you need and to get it to do the things that you want rather than the other way around or becoming too reliant on it. So striking that balance is going to be a key area for people in the workplace. And the opportunity really lies in combining your expertise with the AI, not replacing one with the other. So this should be about enhancing quality, improving quality, and/or improving your productivity and efficiency. That's where the wins are. And then treat it like a powerful tool. It's there to be trained. Don't leave it uncontrolled. Put rules in place. Understand how it works. Understand its limitations. And you can only do that by trying and sort of rolling your sleeves up and getting stuck in. And then for those that are thinking, I'm on the edge, the edge of the cliff now, and I really need to jump in. Where do I start? Which is often the hardest question to answer. Firstly, you could ask the GPT itself to get you going back to my previous advice. But secondly, if you just think about those tasks that are too difficult to start or can be difficult to finish, that's probably where your biggest productivity gains are and quality gains are. So have a think about those tasks because those are the ones where AI will make the biggest and quickest difference. And the only thing that you can do is trial it and give it a go. And that's in some ways the way that you learn with these new technologies. So just very quickly on our socials, I always round up in this way. Please follow us on, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on TikTok, and follow us on LinkedIn. We've got growing audiences on all of those work streams, and we're always pushing useful content out. Feedback, there is always a form that comes to us. I think the technical issues are well known, so feedback on those, go for it if you want to, but we've definitely taken that on board. But if you do have any questions and anything at all, fire it in there. We limit the questions in the session to be time efficient for people, but that's your opportunity to ask, and we're very open to those. And then lastly, we will kick off the webinars again in 2026, Tuesday the 13th, titled TBC. So the last thing is just to thank everyone for joining us on this session and the sessions throughout the year. They've been hugely successful and hopefully beneficial for everyone. So wish you all the best for the festive period, and look forward to seeing you in 2026. Thank you.